I think the worst job that God could ever ask anyone to do was to be a prophet for him. God commissioned the prophets to go out and bear his word to people, give the people the message that he had for them, and it was rarely a message of comfort. It was usually a message of warning, reminding people that they were not following him the way they were supposed to, and that's why everything was going awry, why things were not the way they had wanted them to be, and they had to change their ways and totally and completely renew everything they were doing, or else they were going to face doom. And of course, whenever somebody is preaching like that, while sometimes the people listened to the prophets, more often they did not. People who needed to be reformed had no desire to be reformed. And of course, they did not want to hear the prophets bringing them a message of gloom and doom. And so the prophets were rejected. They were persecuted. Sometimes they were treated very harshly, and even some of them were put to death. And it's even worse because God tells the prophet, basically, you don't have an option as to whether or not you want to do this. I am sending you as a prophet. And if I send you to somebody and you preach my word to him and he changes his ways, well, then he will save his soul, and so will you. You'll save your own. If he does not answer, well, respond to you, well, he will die in his sins, but at least you will save your life. But if I tell you to bring a message to somebody and you do not tell him, and he dies in his sin, I will hold you accountable for his death. So it was a very strong thing that God gave the prophets to do. And today in the gospel reading, though, he does offer a little encouragement. This follows right on the tail of last week's gospel, where Jesus was sending the apostles out to preach and prepare the way for him. But he says to them, fear not, everything will be known. Don't worry about the one who can kill the body but can't kill the soul. And every hair on your head has been counted, and I will bring reward to you for anything you have to suffer for my name. But he also reminds them, anyone who acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my Father. But whoever denies me before others, I will deny before my Father. So he gave the apostles and the 72 that he sent out a pretty strong warning and a really tough job. They had to go out and bear a word to people that some of them would accept, but many other people would not want to hear, and they were unfortunately going to suffer for it. But Jesus says to them, don't worry. If you suffer from me here and now, you will reign with me in my kingdom in glory, as long as you are remaining faithful to me. Aren't you glad he didn't call us to be prophets? Actually, he did. The day we were baptized, we were anointed priest, prophet, and king. Each and every one of us, as a Christian, is literally, the word means a Christ person. And you and I, at our baptism, were anointed and called to go out and be prophets to the world. Bring God's message of salvation to the world. And there will be some people that will accept that message and find it. And they will find salvation in the Lord, and they will rejoice that we brought them to Christ. But there will be many others, and we see them all the time, who have no desire to change, who have no desire to be told what they're doing is sinful, that they have to leave that behind, they can't do this or that, whatever it may be, and they'll get very angry at us. And sometimes in the course of history, even Christians have been put to death by people who did not want to be told that what they were doing was wrong and that they had to change their lives. But you and I, just like the prophets of old, are under an obligation from God, and we don't have a choice as to whether or not we want to bear witness to him. We must do so. That is our calling as Christians. So we all must preach Christ in word and in deed. Now, I as a priest know that very well, because whenever we get up and preach, of course, priests and deacons have the authority to physically preach the gospel to people, which lay people do not have, at least not at Mass. But sometimes when we get up and talk about things at Mass, obviously, anytime we talk about any of the various hot topics that are popular in the world today and debated, then there's always going to be, invariably, somebody who doesn't want to hear that. They don't believe what the church teaches on that, and they don't want to be told that that's a sin, and they come at us with both barrels of the guns. And boy, how many times over my priesthood have I had that barrel right in my face, people screaming and yelling, writing nasty letters, and all sorts of things. How dare you tell me that's a sin? The church is wrong about that, blah, 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 and they don't want to hear it. And of course they're wrong, but that's the priest's job. And it's not easy. It's not a fun thing by any means, and it hurts when somebody treats you that way. But we must do it. And any priest knows it just comes with the territory. One of the things that we need to do as priests is sometimes bring an unpopular message to people, and there will be people who will be offended by it and will be angry at us. Sadly, sometimes there are priests who just can't deal with it because it is painful. And so they decide not to talk about anything controversial. So they just talk about sweet nothings, saying nice little things on Sunday morning that's not going to offend anybody. And it's what I like to refer to as marshmallow theology. Nice and soft and fluffy and tasty, but has no nutritional value whatsoever. Everybody likes a marshmallow once in a while, but try to live on a diet of just marshmallows, and what happens? First of all, you'll get sick, and after a while, the thought of even one more marshmallow, will make you sick to your stomach, even the very thought of it. So, and of course, with that, we're not giving the people the message that Jesus came to bring them. If we're afraid that people may reject the message and we don't bring the message to Jesus, then we're not doing our job. And a priest is not doing his job of preaching the gospel to people, which is what we are ordained to do. And so we know it comes with the territory, but the Lord says to us, and how many times over and over again I've had to remind myself of his words, "Blessed are you when they insult you and persecute you on my behalf. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven will be great." And I've taken comfort in those words lots of times. Now, lay people normally don't have the opportunity to stand up and preach as a priest or a deacon would do, but all of us do have the opportunity to bear witness to Christ in our lives each and every day. And there are many ways of doing it. By the way we live, first and foremost, living following a completely different set of rules than everyone around us does, than that the pagans would do and people who don't know the Lord. Following Christ and making sure we are trained and schooled by him and we are living truly as his disciples. And it will mean sometimes people will see us doing things differently. And they might be inspired by that and say, wow, why do you do this? Why do you still don't eat meat on Friday? Why do you do that? And we tell them why, and maybe they'll be inspired by that. Sometimes there are situations where we do have to stand up and say something to someone. And sadly, I know a lot of times we fall when it comes to that. When we know we should say something, but we don't because we're afraid that somebody will say something against us. They'll call us Jesus freaks or holy rollers or anything like that, and they'll insult us, maybe even yell at us. And it's painful. But when we think about it, we have to say, you know what? Who cares? If they insult us, we will be rewarded by the Lord greatly in heaven for bearing witness to him. And he does also remind us that if we do not bear witness to him, then he will not bear witness to us before the Father. So this is not a comforting message today. It is a challenge to us. But the Lord says, do not be afraid. I will be with you each and every step of the way. I'm thinking of one situation where Christians had a beautiful opportunity to bear witness to Christ and change something that plagues us to this day, and we've dropped the ball. We did not do it. And that is something that came to affect our Sunday worship. When I was a boy, nothing happened on Sunday. The stores were closed. There were no Little League games or anything like that. Nothing happened on a Sunday. You went to Mass and you spent the time with your family. But then the stores opened, and all of a sudden Little League programs and other sports programs started happening on Sunday morning, and people started even having birthday parties and things on Sunday mornings. And we had a golden opportunity when they first started to put sports programs on a Sunday morning. If Christian parents had only gone to the leaders and said, "Excuse me, what is this you're trying to do? Sunday morning is our time for worship. No, our children don't play Little League on Sunday morning, or football, or soccer, or anything else. And how dare you try to intrude in that time that is sacred to God? Well, our children will not play these sports if you're going to make them happen on Sunday mornings. Put them on Sunday afternoon, other days, fine. But Sunday morning is our sacred time with God, and how dare you try to violate that and tell our children they should be playing sports on Sunday morning instead of worshiping God." That would have been the beautiful thing to do. But Christian parents didn't. They went along with it. They caved in and said, well, the sports programs are now on Sunday morning, so I guess we can't go to church. And I wish I had $1 for every time over the years somebody had told me, yeah, now that the football season's over, now we can bring the kids back to Mass. And what message then, when we've done that, have we just given our children? Well, we worship God when there's no sports going on. If it's a choice between sports and God, We play sports because sports are more important than God. Thankfully, not every family does that, and I know there are many people here who are faithful to the Lord, even though there are sports programs that sometimes happen on a Sunday morning. So they say, well, then we have to go Saturday night to Mass if you've got an early game on Sunday, or even get up and go to the 8 o'clock Mass if your game is at 10, so that this way we've worshiped. But sadly, many people just dismiss it. Well, we're too busy today. We just don't have the time to go to church. And what message have we just told our children when we do that? We worship God when we have time for Him. And basically we tell our children everything else is more important than God. Is that the message that we're supposed to be giving our children? No. The message we're supposed to be saying is God is first in our lives. God comes first. And if we have something else that's taking place, maybe on a Sunday, okay, fair enough, but we'll still make sure we worship God faithfully somewhere. My nephew for many years was on a traveling baseball team, but my brother and he and the whole family, no matter where they went, they made sure they found Sunday Mass, and they never missed a Mass once. And where there's a will, there's a way. Unfortunately, far too many people just dismiss it and say, well, we're too busy. We just don't have time to go to Mass today. How sad when we put our sports ahead of God. And I mentioned birthday parties. This year on Palm Sunday, I had 2 altar servers who told me they could not come to their Masses because somebody invited them to a party on Palm Sunday during the morning. Now, I would have thought that would be a wonderful time for somebody to say to the parents of that child, excuse me, Sunday morning? No, we go to church, and this is Palm Sunday. It used to be a big celebration, a big family day, a smaller version of Easter Sunday. No, if you have the party in the afternoon, then we'll happily send our children. But no, you are interfering in our time with God, and you should not be doing that. And you need to have respect for your guests and not plan things that are going to make them have to sacrifice something that is very important to them. Those 2 children, I'm assuming they went to Mass at another time. They just couldn't come to that particular Mass. But even, people, because they don't go to church on Sunday, whatever it is, God is not in their life, but they don't think twice about inconveniencing people who do. My friends, it's time we take Sunday back. It's time we start telling people, no, Sunday is our sacred time with God, and we will not sacrifice it for a Little League program, for a sports program, for somebody's party, for a big beach bash, or whatever it may be that you're asking us to do. No, God comes first. And in doing that, maybe we'll bear witness to them, and people might say, you know what? They stood up for what they believe in. I'm impressed by that. And maybe they too will learn, and maybe even start coming back to church themselves. And if they insult us and say, oh, you're crazy about that, well, too bad. And the Lord will reward us greatly in heaven. Do not be afraid, my friends. The Lord says, I'm with you, and anything that you have to suffer for me, for my sake, your reward will be great in heaven. But do not be afraid to bear witness to Christ, no matter how difficult it may be. You're with the prophets, in good company, with the apostles, and with many Christians over the centuries who had to suffer greatly because of their faith. Thankfully, today, we probably will not be asked to be put to death, or not be put to death, rather, because of our faith. But there will be times where we will have to defend the Lord. And if we've never found that living our faith has made us inconvenient with anything we have to do, or had to take the abuse of somebody else, then we're not following Christ the way we should, because it's inevitable. Invariably, it will happen that when we're faithful to Christ, it will run into a conflict with someone else. Do not be afraid, and do not fear what people would do to you, but trust in the Lord, and He will be with you always. May Jesus Christ be praised, now and forever.